Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This meeting is being live streamed. There will be an opportunity for questions after each presentation from those seated at the table. Representatives from local, state, and tribal partners will have an opportunity to provide updates during agenda item number 9. Public comment will be heard during agenda item 10. We won't be answering questions during the public comment period, but you're welcome to email questions that you would like the district to consider. As a courtesy to others who wish to speak, participants are asked to comment only once on a topic. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We will take public comment first from those who are here in person and then and have submitted their cards, and then followed by the raised hands on Zoom. Staff and presenters will be happy to follow up on specific questions via email. Thank you for attending today. Now I'll pass it to you, Dr. Moran.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here. Good morning, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Executive Director Drew Bartlett. He has a meeting with the Army Corps. A few of us are there in the meeting right now. Unfortunately, the time did not work to have him here right now. He is asking me to do the opening remarks on his behalf. So excited to be having our first 2026 meeting, Resilience Coordination Forum. We are here to continue to engage and provide the updates to local governments on all the initiatives and joint efforts that we are having. So great to have you all here today, the ones online. And also excited to be sharing the agenda that we have today. We are going to have very interesting topics. So our regular updates for the resiliency program, regular updates from our coordination with the Corps, and also a very important milestone in one of our key projects, the CNSF, flood resiliency study in Broward, and aligning with what the Broward County itself is doing. So very great effort there, and it's going to be exciting to share this milestone for this specific project and align what we are doing at the regional level with the local level, which will be presented by the county as well. And then we welcome again all of you presenting updates to us on what is happening around. This time we are also going to have some updates on the water shortage conditions that we have. So great agenda, lots of input to you all. Thank you for the ones joining online. Thanks for the ones that are here today, already in person. With that, I'm going to pass this to our statewide Office of Resilience, our statewide Officer of Resiliency, Eddie Boza. Good morning, Eddie.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Apologies for not being able to be there in attendance today. Had some conflicts with the calendar and spring break and everything that's been going on. So I do want to try to make the next meeting this summer to actually be there in person. So it's great to interact with this group. And I unfortunately had an engagement during the last one, so I wasn't able to participate. And so I look forward to kind of getting plugged in and up to speed with what's going on and where I can help with coordination or anything that's going on at the state level. I didn't prepare any solid updates for today. As many of you probably know, session concluded. There's still some key items that need to be taken care of. And so I hope to have maybe a little more robust update during the next one. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, a lot of our resilience programs and funding that is out in circulation is federal funding. And those are approaching some deadlines coming here soon. So if you're a grantee or a contractor or, somehow tied in to those projects that are federally funded by the ARPA program, those projects, if they want to get reimbursed, need to be wrapping up pretty soon. And so communications will be sent out, friendly reminders about what the guidelines are and what the closeout requirements are. We want to make sure that those get funded to the best of their ability. And that includes meeting some of those deadlines that are coming up later in the year. So if you have any concerns about those projects, we're open to having discussions and helping you figure everything out. But it's kind of a hot topic. You know, we thought projects would be progressing a little bit further along than we're seeing. And so, you know, it's the worst case scenario is that they don't get reimbursed, which is, you know, we don't want to see that. So that's the only update that I have for today. And looking forward to hearing from the presenters and whatever other content we have scheduled. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Eddie. We are certainly on our side working very hard to get to those deadlines. I had meetings earlier today in the morning on some of the projects. So, but yeah, on track to complete all of those. And really very important not to return federal funds because the ARPA funds, once we don't use, it's lost. So we don't want to be in this place. So a lot of internal coordination and a good reminder for everybody. We will be successful in spending all those funds. Eddie, we have so much need, a lot of needs in our region. So let's make sure that we use and spend the funding. Okay. With that, I'm going to pass to Dr. Jacoby. Thank you very much for being with us here in person. Dr. Jacoby is with the Florida Flood Hub. We are also going to have them providing updates in our agendas as a standard agenda item now. So we are having a series of coordination efforts with the Florida Flood Hub. So it's going to be great to have them always here with us. And thank you again, Chuck, for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm here to give you a bit of an update on progress from the Flood Hub. And I'm going to focus on two things. One is change factors, and the other one is recent subscription to getting the synthetic aperture radar data from ISI. Next, thank you. So the rainfall work group that we had organized has sunsetted for the moment because they've completed their initial task. So they used statistical downscaling to produce change factors for the design storms of Atlas 14 stations. And that's meant to help planners account for non-stationarity in the future, which obviously is the warmer atmosphere holds more water, may lead to more intense rainfall. Next, please. So as the work group was going through, there arose a series of sort of challenges, as it were. So these are the things that were addressed as the work group did its deliberations. First of all, while just about at the almost the end point, a new global coupled intermodal comparison set of data came out. So they had been working on CMIP 5, as it was called, and then CMIP 6 came out. And so the question arose, do we combine them? Do we shift to one? Do we stick with CMIP 5? And this choice was to go with the newer data, partly because the approaches that were done in the older version, CMIP 5, weren't being carried forward directly. So we just decided to shift to the new data. There were two data sets that were in this particular set of comparisons. One called LOCA 2, which is a kind of a revised version of one that had existed earlier, and then a NASA version. The question was, do we combine those? Do we, we present them both? How do we approach that? And the consensus among the experts was that we go with LOCA 2 because the NASA approach, the statistical downscaling they use, is a kind of an older method that people feel they've moved beyond. So we just went with the one data set. Then the data sets contain different shared socioeconomic pathways, which is the overall global forcing that drives the temperature. And so there are three of those, and so the question arose, do you want to combine them? How do you want to deal with those? And the work group decided to keep them separate so that the practitioners would have a better chance of sort of assessing their own level of risk comfort. One of the things that we looked at was, is there any sort of spatial differentiation across the state in the change factors that were calculated? And when we looked at the values for the various Atlas 14 stations and so forth, any of the pattern that was in the medians was relatively minor compared to the variation that you get just from the variation in the modeling. So we've gone with statewide values. So there's no spatial variation in these change factors. And another reason for that, and we'll go into this in a second a little more, is that the statistical downscaling decouples the values from the dynamics. So that there wasn't a direct link to any dynamics that would explain why there would be a spatial pattern. Now again, you have to think, we're not talking about a spatial pattern in rainfall, that everybody agrees exists, but we're talking about a spatial pattern in the change in rainfall driven by global temperatures. So, why there's got to be a reason if there's going to be a spatial pattern. Another thing we checked on was, do these values just sort of make sense, as it were? So the basic driver is this Clausius-Clapeyron scaling, which is, as the atmosphere warms, it holds more moisture, and there's a value for that. And so we just checked the medians against predicted values for different temperature increases. And it turns out that, the values were consistent. There wasn't anything untoward there. Then the other thing that happened is the Resilient Florida program shifted from using 2040 and 2070 as their planning horizons to 2050 and 2080. So we had to go back and recompute values for those time horizons. And next, please. So these are these are the change factors. So the graphs show you on the y-axis are the change factors. They run typically just right around or slightly above 1, which means that there's an increase, a predicted increase in rainfall. Then along the y-axis are the 3 shared socioeconomic pathways. So as you go from left to right, you get more intense increase in temperature. And then inside that are the durations of the storms, 1, 3, and 7 days. That's the durations that were looked at. And then inside that are the return intervals for the various storms, right? From 5 to 500 years, going from least to more intense. And the 2 graphs are for 2050 and 2080. So these data have now been certified, and they are on the DEP website, which you can get to if you go to the Resilient Florida program, and then look at the Resilient Florida program content, which is that table that they give you with all the different things they've worked on. And then there's a link called the Florida Change Factor Dataset 1.0. And you'll get to a spreadsheet with some metadata, sort of a summary of what the work group did to get to those values. The other thing that we've done is speak with Resilient Florida about how to make use of these data, right? So that's a lot of different potential change factors. And next, please. And the decision kind of harkened back to what was done with the sea level rise work group. So the sea level rise work group looked at the data that was used in the 2022 federal report and focused in on 2 of the kind of global scenarios that are out there, the intermediate low and the intermediate scenario. Those scenarios were chosen to basically parse out the results of all the modeling at 2100. So the low has predictions of about a foot of sea level rise by 2100, and the high has predictions of a little over 6 foot of sea level rise by 2100. So they just tried to parse out, and so that they could talk about the different pathways we might see. So the reason that the work group focused on that is in the next slide. And that's because of the exceedance probabilities that go along with those magnitude of changes, right? So exceedance probabilities tell you how likely it is that that scenario will be exceeded. And for what is now the consensus of 3 degrees temperature change by 2100, the exceedance probabilities for the intermediate and intermediate low are neither, very high or very low, right? So you're not looking at either something that's likely to be exceeded or something that's very unlikely to be exceeded. And so that's why that focus was on those, and then that took us to the 3 degrees. And the 3 degrees increase in temperature falls in the realm of the shared socioeconomic pathways 2, 4.5, and 3, 7.0, somewhere in between those two. And so that's what, next slide, please. What we spoke with Resilient Florida about, and they will be looking probably to have people run scenarios using change factors from 2.2, 4.5, and 3, 7.0, so that they have a way to look across proposals and not have to recalculate vulnerabilities and so forth. And so next, please. Another thing that we're underway with is a regional modeling exercise, which was spoken about last time the forum met, where in order to kind of improve our understanding and our ability to talk sensibly about change factors, we're trying to do dynamical downscaling. So rather than statistical, we're trying to take the dynamics that drive some of these changes and carry them through to a finer resolution. The global models don't really see Florida all that well. They're 1 degree latitude by 1 degree longitude grid. Florida doesn't take up many of those grids, and a lot of the things that affect weather in Florida are local, more local than the global models see. And that you can kind of pick out in that top figure on the right-hand side, where the left is the global effort, and the right-hand side you can sort of see the Gulf Stream and the loop current, right? So as you bring the resolution down with that community Earth system model, you can now begin to see some of these local things that affect weather in Florida. Then we'll pass those outputs off to another group that will bring it down another notch, as it were, down to about a 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer grid. And the initial results indicate that, you know, that sort of dynamical downscaling allows you to see weather patterns in Florida much better, and that's that middle figure on the right-hand side. So the observed is on the left, the CESM is in the middle, and then you can see that the one on the right, which is the downscaled version, matches the observed a little better. Then we're going to go one step further and pass those results off to help drive a weather research and forecasting model, which will bring the predictions down to about a 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer grid. And in some instances, we may go down to a 1 by 1 kilometer grid for specific events. And then you can start to see things like the weather event that was in Fort Lauderdale in April 2023, where they did a pretty good job of predicting that, you know, over 20 inches of rainfall in that spot. So that's ongoing. Next, please. And the plan is, what we've established is a reference period, so all of the models will deal with this reference period, and that's 10 years centered on 2015, so 2011, 2020. And then there will be a set of historical ensembles, so 5 10-year runs looking backward, which will help establish, again, validate the models and help establish some measures of uncertainty. And then 5 10-year simulations looking at a 2-degree increase in temperature, and 5 more 10-year simulations looking at a 3-degree increase in temperature. So rather than following a particular timeline and a particular shared socioeconomic pathway, the models are just going to look at these temperatures, and wherever that pathway crosses that temperature, then, you know, these predictions will hold. And the whole concept, again, is to be able to take the historical modeling, compare it with the modeling with changes in temperature, and come up with a change factor. But this time you'll have the dynamics. So if there are things that you see in the change factors, you can work your way back to what might have led to those sorts of patterns or things that were of interest. We also think that the data set will be really useful for looking at other things. For example, this is looking at extreme wetness, and we can probably go into the data set and look at extreme dryness as well. So again, that should help with things like water supply planning. And next, please. And so this sort of new addition is a subscription to the services of ISI for the state, which was funded by the Flood Hub in this instance. And why the Flood Hub did that is a long story that we'll save for another time. But next, please. what we're going to access, and I think some of you may know about this even more than I do, which is, ISI, their element is the synthetic aperture radar, which sees water levels through clouds and so forth, and is very good at detecting water. And they ingest that and other sources of data to generate flood extents and depths. And that's at about a 4 meter by 4 meter resolution. So they will provide, so basically reports leading up to, during, and then after storms. We also may get access to some of the other products that they're kind of testing. That includes a reporting system that has more frequent updates than daily, as well as they are using their sort of before and after radar images, radar data, to estimate wind damage. And so we may again be able to test out some of that. And next. So the deal we have at the moment covers the state agencies. Right now, the ones that are listed here are the ones that are listed in the contract, but we can add others if others are interested in joining. And it reaches down to the water management districts. And so these are the groups that will actually access raw data, as it were, the rasters for flood depth and so forth. And next, please. So again, what we'll get are reports on all the storms for 2026, but we also have garnered access to the archive of storms, which reaches back to Ian in 2022 is the first major one they captured for Florida. And then derivatives can be passed on to others, and I know Caroline is going to go into that in more detail. And the Flood Hub will be looking to find partners for future years if this turns out to be data that are of value to the wider group. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have questions around the room here? I do have, but I'm going to see if anybody else has. Yes, go ahead, Amy. Good
So
morning.
with the change factors, South Florida Water Management District has their change factors. Are you going to update yours, or are we going to go to the states now? How's that going to happen?
Yes, thank you for this question. That was going to be my question, somehow related. So yes, we work with the Florida Flood Hub. So we provided them the first CMIP5 set of data and the methodology. They work to extend the CMIP5 to the statewide numbers. After we completed, we got the new CMIP6 data right away, and that's why we spend this extra time to be able to then incorporate the latest and greatest data. So the numbers that the state have now are better than the ones we have in our website. The ones we have are 2040, 2070, and CMIP5. The numbers that are being published right now really is the first time I'm hearing this is published now in the website. So great thanks for the update. The numbers are newer. They are from the latest and greatest models, and they also go 2050, 2080. So it's really great to be there. We're going to work to add the proper link to the statewide numbers to our websites and our pages here to then use the latest and greatest numbers.
And one last question. Sorry, Amy Eason with Martin County. So I like the ICE subscription, and I'm glad to see the states doing that and allowing the water management districts to do that. And then my question will be, because at Martin County we've got a real live flood forecasting model for one of our basins, so it'd be cool to see how that relates with what ICE is coming out with, and will we as a municipality be able to access that through the water management district for them to give us maybe the data so that we could see what happens compared to our forecasting models?
So, there are a lot of issues in terms of what data can be passed around and how we do it. And we're still sort of sorting through all of that. But my guess is that we can provide you some sort of derivative that would allow you to do a lot of what you want to do.
So we are working, and I'm going to cover on one slide on my presentation, the approaches that we are working with them to get the ability to transfer the data to local governments like we used to do in our contract. So our contract is expiring now in March, and it's going to be replaced by the statewide contract. So we are working with them right now to understand exactly what derivative means, because it's very subjective, and we are pushing as hard as we can to be able, I'm going to keep pushing, because we work very closely with the local partners. We have been exchanging data through all those events, and we want to be able to do that. The raw data, no, but some derivatives and the way we have been interpreting the data internally here at the Water Management District, and using additional data, because we are training and doing collection of flood observation data. We are going to have other sources. So yes, we will find a way that we can get the consensus from them on the best format to share derivatives with you.
Yeah, I totally forgot that you guys were using it. I mean, how was your feel for using it? I mean, was it helpful?
So we used first time in Ian. It was great. We all learn. We learn. They learn as well in terms of how we read through the data and realities here in Florida. So it was interesting. We have been also using very initially to help calibrate models. Again, we lack data on observed flooding, and a lot of that is key to help us calibrate the models that are driving all those decisions right now. I mean, we talk about economic benefits. The economic-based benefits are derived from flood extents. This is important to us. We need to have the best and greatest data to be able to get the best outcomes and continue to provide robust benefit analysis and also calibrate models. So we have been using, it's good, we did some comparisons, and we will continue to explore the tool.
And just to touch back on the question about switching to new change factors. So I think one of the things worth remembering is that any of these sorts of estimates are going to be updated on a moderately regular basis, so don't be surprised if there's new change factors in X years. Plus, certainly for the Flood Hub, the stuff that we're putting out is neither proscriptive nor prescriptive. So once again, the Resilient Florida program uses it to kind of help them set priorities, as it were, better by being able to compare apples on apples. But if people have a different risk tolerance, they just need to justify using a different set of numbers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Chuck, my question was, so you mentioned the numbers, the Excel numbers are published, and some notes on how to apply. Is this a report or just notes that embedded in the Excel?
Currently, there's some metadata in the Excel file, and the advice was something that I spoke with Eddie and some of the other leadership about, and how to go forward with this, given that there's this broad array that was provided. What should people be trying to do?
Good, so the draft report from the work group is not yet on the website. Okay, the timing is good because we are submitting a report to the Army Corps using the statewide numbers. We met to decide if we're going to use our CMMP 5 or 6. We went ahead and used the 6 on the study with the Corps that I'm going to talk next. So having the reference on the Florida Flood Hub will be key, and we are delivering in about a month, so this is excellent. So hopefully we can bring the report as well soon. Okay, any more questions? Thank you, Chuck. Thank you again, Eddie, if you're still in line. We appreciate the collaboration from the state on many of our actions efforts. So it's great to have you joining us and really providing updates on a series of efforts. So we welcome you next time here as well, Eddie. No pressure, but if you can come, it will be great too. Thank you for joining us. So I'll move there to the other mic just to start my presentation and provide some updates. Okay. So we do have a little bit, I would say, longer presentation today with a few more updates. We are going to be covering some of the shortage events that we have been handling right now, and also preparation for the wet season. I joke that anytime that we talk about a dry event, then the rain comes and helps us, and then we move and switch the sides. I think a little bit of that is happening now, which is good news. But anyway, we're going to cover some of those events too here. And with that is also some of, he's structuring the team. I talked to you a little bit before about the new division. And inside the division, we are also integrating some of the roles. So I'm happy to announce today, and Anush is here with us, another team update. She has been with the team, but she is now promoted to bureau chief. So she is going to be really handling the flood control and water supply planning for our division. She has more than a decade experience at the district here. She has worked as a section lead on the groundwater modeling unit. She has led major regional modeling efforts. Groundwater, she coordinated very closely with the surface water modeling team as well. She has also worked closely with the CFWI, Regional Water Supply Plan, and really integrating 3 water management districts in modeling efforts as part of her role. And her background really includes technical oversight, interagency coordination. She also participated as an expert witness testimony in one of the SUR projects, again, discussing groundwater, surface water models, and all those interpretations, which is key in this new role. And really talking with our technical team, executive team, and diverse audiences. She has a master in civil engineering from FAU, and her research really focused on groundwater variability under those changing conditions. She did step into sea level rise simulations as well from the groundwater world. So we really welcome her in this new role. We are integrating as part of the team and the functions that we have here, but again, welcome Anushi. She, just to show you where she is right now in the organization, so our division of flood control and water supply planning really coordinates the planning and is stepping into implementation. So full implementation remains with engineering, but there are significant steps that when we walk through the implementation, including grant applications, grant management, really getting the conceptual projects that are coming from modeling and getting them to a level that they can be designed, which is now required as part of feasibility analysis. This is all within our team. So really advancing all those work closely with our internal teams here, a series of internal teams. I mentioned engineering, one of the key, but we work very closely with modeling, of course, regulation, and a series of teams here. And really coordinating with the local, state, and federal partners with big support from external affairs. So it's an endeavor, and we appreciate the opportunity to work so closely with all the internal teams and our external partners. And we really support water supply and flood control planning. Advanced resiliency initiatives, resiliency is embedded in both water supply and flood control planning, and really setting the projects to move towards implementation. So Anushi will be overseeing this, what we call planning side of the house, data collection, modeling, coordination with other modeling teams, and initial recommendations into the planning, right? So all planning documents. By the time we start stepping into designs, coordination with engineering, grant applications, grant implementation, grant management, and projects implementation in general, including, for instance, feasibility studies with the core that we are embedding some 30% design that's being overseen by Tarana Solomon. She's back. She's there on the back of the room too, so we are really excited that we have both of them here. Welcome back, Tarana. We miss you a lot, so happy to have the team fully here to continue to do our work and continue to embed resiliency in the way that we do planning and assess all the risks as an agency. Stepping into the updates from all the areas, so beginning with data analysis and data collection, water and climate resilience metrics. We just published the 2026 Florida Environmental Report. We had an open house earlier this month. So as part of this work, the metrics, on chapter 2, we have the major updates on the water year 2025, looking at hydrology, water management, and the event summaries. So all the critical events, extreme event summaries are there as well. And then on chapter 2B, so chapter 2A is the static water data and data assessment. Chapter 2B is then looking at trends and some of those long-term assessments. So this year we published another update on rainfall, including data all the way to 2024-25. So really looking at rainfall from a regional perspective, and also with a new approach on finding ways that we can cluster smaller areas if we see a signal Very great work. We also have drought. We have meteorological drought assessment, so using ET and rainfall data, trying to understand drought, meteorological drought. That was another metric. And then we had high tides events at coastal structures, so a different way of really looking at those high tides, observed data in our coastal structures and the ability of those coastal structures to perform. And then we had saltwater intrusion update, really building on the latest the latest and greatest map that was published by in the 5-year update of the saltwater intrusion line. For 2027, we are already planning again Chapter A with the same analysis there for the water year, and then Chapter 2B. We're going to look at sub-daily rainfall. We have some assessments already done by USGS. We are going to integrate some of our data and then produce those trends from a sub-daily perspective. We are working on assessing the flooding events database. We talk a little bit right now in terms of how we compile this data, flooding observations, how we can see if there is a long-term trend. It's still very early for us to assume we'll be able to see a trend. We don't have that much data, but we are kind of trying to define an approach in terms of how we look at frequency, extent, and can track those the changing flooding patterns that we observe here in South Florida. We also have water quality, some of the water quality advances that we have been doing. And then we're going to have, still to be confirmed, but an initial assessment on how we look at algae blooms and if there is any changing and observed conditions from a long-term perspective. Again, still early. When we talk long terms, we like to really have 20 to 30 years of data. So we're going to see how much we can do here. But great work, excited. Nicole is the coordinator here, the lead on the water and climate resilience metrics, and the posters were amazing this year. The chapters are really strong, so take advantage of this as well. As part of this effort, so we look at observed trends and we try to translate all of that in terms of how we build scenarios, right? That's why we are looking at those trends. We want to be able to have risk-informed scenarios into the future. So our internal work group continued to work on that. As part of the ongoing efforts, we have been looking at how we project droughts into the future. That will be the main input data that we're going to feed in addition to sea level rise into the water supply vulnerability assessment. So right now the model is ready to go. We are building those scenarios. So we really are working. We complete some of the work and we are just refining some of the selection of the scenarios of those global climate models, correcting some of the bias on the evapotranspiration and doing a spatial transformation in the rainfall just in terms of how it distributes among our areas. So exciting work. The groundwater modeling team is ready to receive this data so they can run those scenarios from again, this is a water supply vulnerability assessment, the first time we are stepping into that. And we are going to have sea level rise scenarios and we're going to have some scenarios modifying ET and rainfall as well. As part of the corkscrew work, CFWI, we have been also looking at rainfall on a long term, but the surplus and anomalies on long term that can help inform the study. We did one of those discussions as part of the work group. The project team is now working with some of those scenarios, not necessarily using some of the derived models here, but we walk those steps to support their scenario formulation as part of this assessment. Was the first time we also needed that to look at like long-term changes in rainfall. And we continue to work very closely. Chuck covered this last item, the statewide couple ocean atmospheric regional model, the dynamic model that we are building right now. So we really are, the work group is the avenue that we have to review the internal the products that are being shared by the Florida Flood Hub internally. And really, we are going to work to also have access to data to support review and any additional effort that is being produced by the Florida Flood Hub. So thank you, Chuck, for also facilitating that data exchange. You have been key on that effort as well. Moving from data to the modeling, our main on the flood control side, our main program is the flood protection level service. We have 2 ongoing phase 1 efforts, Western Basin and Taylor Creek. So Hendry and Collier counties, we have right now current conditions assessments ongoing. So we passed the initial calibration validation and we are running the model to represent current conditions in this Western basins. The next one is Okeechobee and Martin County. What we are doing is still on the calibration and validation step. As part of phase 2, we close adaptation and mitigation planning effort. We are really near completion of the C7 basin. We had wrap up C8 and C9. Those were the two most advanced. Now we are integrating C7 to this Rich B area in North Miami-Dade County. So we hosted a workshop, and we are just doing final QA/QC of the reports. And then we have a combined phase 1, phase 2 in St. Lucie and Martin County. We got Resilient Florida funding to support this effort. So we broke it down in 2 areas. So the Loxahatchee current conditions runs are happening right now. And then we are still finishing calibration and validation, completed calibration and validation, and we'll be stepping into current conditions for the St. Lucie area. The next plan, FPLOS study, still pending funding confirmation, is the Caloosahatchee phase 1. That includes Charlotte, Lee, Glades, and Hendry counties. So that's the plan to be initiated in the next fiscal year. Just a summary from the C7 study. I mentioned a public workshop. So what we have right now is our strategic selected plan that includes the long-term flood risk management options that were selected and recommended as part of the study. So there is a very extensive, comprehensive flood damage reduction benefits, though we advance additional steps. Really great work done by the consultants here. Really kudos to the project team and the consultants into getting us the ability to look at those comprehensive benefits and economic assessments on one more step and more refined step to help us on that. So great work. We have been already advancing, and we actually complete design for one of this strategic selected plan component, which is S27. But still the study is serving the purpose of looking everywhere else in the basin. So we are focusing, enhancing the coastal structure as the really key recommendation here, but we understand there are other things that we can do in the basin. There are local watershed projects that are complementary to this, and this is what this study does. It really integrates this main primary system project recommendations with the local components in order to optimize flood reduction in the basin and enhance, of course, overall system performance. The meeting materials are here, the presentations and the recording of the public meeting, and really the recommendations coming from this study will be updated in the resiliency plan that we are just doing every year here. So the projects on the plan will be updated every year, and we're going to bring all the project recommendations for the C7 to the set of projects that we have in the resiliency plan. The last FPLOS update here today is on the Upper Kissimmee Basin. So we finished the phase 1 about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. And then we step into what we call a targeted phase 2 FPLOS study, really looking at some of the non-regret strategies, similarly to what we did in other basins. But after disasters, so Milton and Ian, we really look at some of those gates, infrastructures that were not performing well and could have helped us handle the event better. So really the essence of what we do as a post-disaster assessment, right? Like how can we handle this event better next time? So those initial selected projects we run through an adaptation planning effort, so putting them all together, not looking everything that can happen in the basin, but really looking at how those key projects would function together and some additional local considerations. So we run 2 efforts, which we call task A1 and AB, which is a refinement, and this effort is supporting recommendations for basis of design. So where do we start the sizings of all those structures? And we completed the whole age and age model for those adaptation efforts, and we also completed an economic assessment that is supporting the post-disaster applications that we have ongoing with DEM. Stepping into the modeling side on the water supply, I touched water supply vulnerability assessment and groundwater modeling and how we are going to be running both sea level and some of those projected drought conditions. So as you can see, we have made some progress here in the current status set here. We have completed future land use and population distribution. We have completed the public utility and self-supply well withdrawals. I'm talking about 50-year horizon planning here. So this is not traditional water supply planning efforts. Those are additional, really looking at 50 years instead of 2025. So we are right now finalizing the irrigation well withdrawals that will incorporate the climate change aspect. And then we are also, as I mentioned in my previous slides, really looking at draw, rainfall, ET, and temperature, doing the final refinements in the data to bring to the model. There is also a very important step that will happen as we complete all this input data, which is going to be the regional surface water modeling that will be run to help us set the boundary conditions for the groundwater model. So those are going to start in April. And then we have anticipated that the CSM, this is the groundwater model that we use to do this assessment, that will be running in the summer. And stepping into our regular water supply plans, the next round of 5-year updates starts this year with the Upper East Coast Plan. So this is again the traditional 20-year planning period. We have the traditional demands, estimates, and projections, identifying those water source options, looking at, of course, MFL, all the the prevention and recovery strategies that we have in the agency, environmental protective and restoration strategies, and working very closely with the water utilities to understand needs, their plans, and also water supply developments. As I mentioned, the first one of the 5-year series is starting this year. This is the Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan. We have Martin and San Lucie counties in the northwest portion of Okeechobee County as part of this area. 17 public water supply utilities, major agricultural industry in this area, and of course some of the important natural and water resources, C23, 24, and 25 canals are part of this area. San Lucie River and estuary in Indian River Lagoon and the North Fork of the Oxahatchee River. So the team is working at full speed. We have a public workshop that is scheduled in the beginning of May. I hope I'm not doing the date wrong, and she's saying yes. And we plan to approve the plan in November this year. So we are going to be announcing the workshops very soon. And then on the resiliency plan update side, as I mentioned, we are not going to update the plan. We're going to update the full document every 5 years. But what we are doing is a projects repository and a dashboard that will allow us to maintain the status of the projects, the descriptions. Of course, those projects evolve, so getting the latest description scope for each of the projects and the status is the goal for this dashboard. So the team is really working on translating what we had in terms of a spatial database to this dashboard to facilitate interaction, and then also facilitate the update during those 5 years that we're not going to have the document itself updated. So the rollout is expected to June. So if we are successful in the next forum, we're going to be presenting the tool to you as a draft to receive comments before we finalize. We are aiming September. We still need to provide a list of projects to DEP by September 1st and provide a list of updates to the state legislative and the governor by October 1st. So we still have some deadlines here that we are going to continue to adhere. 2 more studies. I'm going to not talk too much about those 2 right now. First, because I will present some of these updates right after Greg. We have a strategy here to show kind of like the regional resiliency and how the local resiliency efforts at this Broward Basins is happening. But we reach a very important milestone in the 203 here. So for the Broward Basin CNSF study, flood risk management study, we are right now under one of the last steps, which is the cost certification process with the Walla Walla District and the Army Corps. And we also published and completed a draft integrated feasibility report and environmental assessment We received a series of comments. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but thank you everyone who provided those comments. We are addressing and finalizing the report, and our goal is to publish this in April. And on the 216, Jenny and team will cover this. We are working very closely with the Corps. Again, same goals, very similar projects. The 216 led by SAJ in Miami area. So we are advancing the modeling efforts to represent the initial array of alternatives. There is also economic analysis being done by the SAJ team using HackFDA, similarly to like we did on 203. And we had meetings with the city of Coral Gables, and we had meetings also with city of Miami, and we are scheduling Miami Aviation and flood inland navigation for this to review the initial array and step into the final array. And we are also doing some sensitivity testing to help us capture some of the risks that we have on this basin. We have a little higher resolution in the Reach C 216 that we had on the 203, so we are looking to see how we can get the same outputs that we have there. And we are scheduling, Jenny, we might talk about the public meeting that will happen hopefully later in the spring. Stepping into implementation, so FDM, FEMA HMGP, and the EP grant implementation. So for the 3 projects on Reach B, if I'm saying Reach B and you don't know, it's just again C7, C8, C9 in Miami. So we have completed design. We have submitted all the design, and we are waiting to hear back from FEMA on the closeout of those design grants. We got a very positive feedback through the coordination with our state agency. I am very grateful to have the opportunity to work so closely with DM. They have been helping us on that a lot. And our goal was to have the ability to get those 3 design projects reviewed and approved by FEMA, not just to close out the phase 1 grant, but also to allow those projects to be ready to receive construction funds in the federal level. Fingers crossed, we are hoping to get some of this funding back. And we also have grants that we receive from the state. So we are still on planning to initiate construction later in 2026, depending on all these funding negotiations that are happening right now. And we are working on several land negotiations, key land negotiations that will also help us on initiating this work, the construction work. So Miami-Dade County at Graynos Park is our top priority. We are working very closely with them. We are hoping to wrap up this negotiation soon. We also have initiated some negotiation with Miami Shores, and we have also at C7, we purchased the land, and we have still some temporary easement that we are wrapping up some of the needs that we have to initiate construction. Addition of Resilient Florida grants that we receive, we have 3 new grants for this cycle. One of them is fully executed. The 2 additional ones, we are working to finalize some of the details on the work plan description. And we are scheduling the periodic site visits. Aidan is here waiting for us to do the dates and give the green light for us to visit those 3 sites. And then we also have 1 additional planning grant that we received with Lee County for the real-time flood forecasting that we're also working on on completing the grant scope work plan. And the DEP Innovative Tech grant, that's the additional one that we have. This is our Wipeout project, so really pilot technologies that we are doing, that we're going to be testing in collaboration with Miami-Dade County. The good news is that we have initiated the construction of the trenches that we'll be using to do the testing and the experiment there. So we have construction photos already added to this slide here. This is really exciting. We have been working on this project for 2-3 years, so we are on target to initiate the monitoring in the spring ahead of the wet season this year. So really exciting, and great update there. And as we continue to depend on those grant fundings, we did apply for 2 more grants. We are looking at one additional one with DM that unfortunately I don't think we are eligible. We wanted to begin advancing some of the designs. That's our priority right now. We want to get some of those projects that we have in the plan and really step into bases of design to make them to pass the conceptual phase that they are in the plan right now. So we are seeking avenues through the FDM to do this initial design. We need additional information to understand better how we can do, but we submitted also a watershed master plan for the FPLOS phase 1 study that we mentioned, focusing on the Lee County portion there, and then also for the basis of design on the C7 canal enhancement for the EPA. And also on the grant side, we have our cooperative funding program. This is on the grant side on water supply, alternative water supply and water conservation. So in anticipation of the state funds that will be allocated later this year, we opened the 2027 cycle on December 1st, and with the portal closed on February 26th this year. We will be presenting the project list at the next governing board meeting in May, the following one in May. So, and here's just a summary of all the applications that we received throughout those years, all the projects that we have been supporting throughout those years, both in the water supply side, so a significant number of projects there, 539 total number of alternative water supply funding, and then on the water conservation, 278 projects that we supported since the beginning of the program. Okay, final portion of this presentation is going to be then the updates on the water shortage, and then just stepping into the wet season prep. We did issue, the Water Management District South Florida issue a water shortage warning back on February 5th to Collier, Glades, Highlands, Lee, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties. The latest data on the U.S. drought monitor indicates that we are still in moderate to extreme drought conditions in the lower East Coast, and then in the lower West Coast and Indian Prairie Basin, which really corresponds to those areas where we have the warnings, we are in an extreme drought condition. Actions that we have been doing since those conditions were observed. So we are focusing primarily on enhanced monitoring. We have bi-weekly meetings with all the utilities, water users in those areas, and they are providing and helping us to assess groundwater levels in the Biscayne Aquifer and the lower Tamiami aquifers. Those are the two areas of concern. So extremely grateful for all the support and coordination that we receive from those utilities and water users. We have been receiving data every week, and we have been having the ability to assess those conditions jointly. Again, great to have the ability to see it and get this data and work very closely with those utilities throughout those events. We also have been working very closely to understand the water levels, monitor water levels and canals and lakes within the Indian Prairie Basin, again with support from the local stakeholders, support from our external affairs team, really engaging every relevant user in those discussions and helping understand conditions in the area together. As I mentioned, water levels, not only water levels, but we are also receiving chloride data on a weekly basis by all those partners in those areas. So kudos to the team that put the logistics together to be able to receive all this data and also present and assess all those conditions throughout the event. We have submitted a temporary deviation request for Lake Estopoga. It's under final review by the Army Corps, so that would allow us to operate the lake in case we are below some of the regulation schedules. And another very important action has been public outreach and encouraging conservation. We do that throughout the year. We do that, and we should be doing more, but especially during those drought conditions that we have been observing, we are working very closely with our partners as well in the local governments to encourage residents, visitors, business to conserve water, mainly limit irrigation. That's the focus of what we have been prioritizing. So all landscape irrigation should be complying with the allowed days and times established in the local government's year-round landscape irrigation ordinance, in most cases 2 to 3 days a week. So public outreach, encouraging conservation, that has been a lot of the efforts, and thank you again to all the partners that have been helping us to get the message out. Just a quick glance on conditions. This map was green, blue, beautiful just when I first saw it. Unfortunately, last week is again a little bit on the dry side. So for the past 7 days, we did not get some rain, even though the week before we did. And overall conditions for the dry season remains on the dry side. So we were, I would say, 20 to 30% of the normal rain. We are now a little bit higher, maybe 40 to 50 in some locations, maybe a little higher than 50% of the normal rain, but it's still below drier than normal conditions in our entire area here at the district. Some rain, a little bit better than it was in general, but continuing to monitor all those conditions. And groundwater conditions is the next one we are looking at, of course, and those we are seeing a lot of the darker black dots here that represent higher levels, which is good news. This was really a result of the rainfall that happened last week. This map was very different a week before, with some points really red, and now we are on a more stable condition in some locations. So again, we are continue to hope that the rain will continue to come. That's what we have been expecting. So we want to have more of the, I would say less of the points that are here summarized in the table, which means locations that the levels are lower than the 10% of the time. So right now those numbers are low. We hopefully to continue to stay in this range as we go through the dry season. And yes, we are a few months from the dry season perspective, a lot of months yet to come, anxious, but at the same time getting prepared to the wet season. So May to October is our wet season, so getting ready to start this, and hurricane season, as you know, June to November, and the king tide season, August to December. So from the king tide season perspective, we were able to assess all those peak conditions. So the estimate that we have, the forecast that we have for this year is now published, summarized. Dates are here showing this slide. We're not going to start any activity yet, but later in the year we'll begin with the bulletins, and we're going to be publishing all this information. It is in our website, so really just getting ready for the king tide season and continuing to provide enhanced king tide forecast on a weekly basis beginning in August, September. We have training that has been scheduled. Again, I think it's our third year that we do this comprehensive training on flood observations and high water mark. We have been communicating with the partners, local governments, and all the interested parties on the dates. If you have not yet received this, please go ahead and scan this QR code and share with your staff, interested folks. So here is the list of dates and the locations that we'll be doing this trainings. And again, thank you for the team, our GIS team, our external affairs that have been leading all the effort on this and in preparation for the trainings. As announced, we did announce this last year, and now in this, as we step into the wet season, we have this system now of local contact notification that is being implemented. So basically, anytime we receive a flood observation or we collect data, the data will be shared by the tool automatically with the local governments. They can access the data, download, and use for local processes. So there is instructions here on creating accounts, and then there will be a testing as well done on April 14 on how this notification system works. And as an optional add-on to the training this year, we're going to have a module, an optional module in the afternoon that will really walk through the water and climate resilience metrics data and how we use this information to support resiliency planning. So all of those discussions that we have been talking here, Chuck presented, we presented, is really to support planning efforts, and we're going to just have an additional session that will be offered following the regular training on flood observations and high water mark to really step into the tool, share what we have in terms of data, how to access the data, how to download, and any additional
needs to be able to share with the local governments that we have. So an email will be shared with you all to confirm who would be interested to join this follow-up meetings in the afternoon. And then the last, not least, slide here. As Chuck mentioned, we will be having now our contract with ISI is expiring in March. For this wet season, we're going to be utilizing the statewide contract, and we have limitations in how much raw data, just the raw data we can provide to local governments like we used to be able to provide in the past. We will continue to develop those derivative projects, as I mentioned earlier on, using the data packages that will be open to us from ISI. We are still negotiating this, so don't take this language here as a final language, because we still need concurrence from ISI and the Florida Flood Hub on how we are going to do that. This is, as I mentioned earlier today, this is a little subjective, but our plan is to get to those two options here. So looking at how the data that is provided to us from ISI in terms of extent is overlaying with our unit grid and pre-identified flood-prone areas. So our database, as we can show here in the right, has flood-prone areas that we have mapped through all those years. I think we started in 1990s. So the repository here has data from the 1990s, meaning we were able to delineate some of those flood extents from the 1990s, and that's what we call the flood-prone areas. So we're going to be overlapping that with those extents coming from ISI data, and creating, the goal is here is to determine a unit grid that we can look at frequency and extent. And then another option here is also use those derived extent polygons coming from ISI to validate against the LiDAR data that we have and some of our existing infrastructure and operational rules, because as you know, in South Florida, it's not just a bathtub, simple exercise, but really looking at those extents to understand how the operations and the existing infrastructure would help us determine the extent there. So again, this is our goal. We will keep you updated by the next meeting before the wet season. We'll have the final answers to you all. And thank you, Chuck, for facilitating all those coordinations, and also excited to have the statewide contract right now. Having the whole state covered by this option is the way to go, and facilitates us as well in terms of costs. So thank you. With that, I'm going to go back to my seat there. Okay, much better to continue from here. So any questions, any comments? Yes.
Of course, I have one. Now, just one. Can you tell me the difference between the vulnerability assessment, the water supply vulnerability assessment or plan versus doing the Upper East Coast planning? I would assume that you would know your vulnerabilities as you're planning for the East Coast.
So the Upper East Coast Plan is our traditional water supply plan, statutorily required. So we go through everything that is required through the Florida statutes, and it's a 20-year horizon. So there is no change. That's how it has been doing. If you have specific questions, Anushi is here and can help you answer. The water supply vulnerability assessment is not statutorily requirement. We are calling it on purpose. It's a different project. It's not a water supply plan, and we are looking at a 50-year horizon. So we're going to do vulnerability assessments. We are going to utilize as much as possible the same way that we are building those scenarios. So input data scenario assumptions, really looking at 50 years. And then also having the ability to assess sea level and climate-related scenarios. The 20-year horizon plan still does not have sea level rise, but it's the tool is being built right now, and they will have anyway in the 20-year horizon once the model is calibrated. But the water supply vulnerability assessment is 50 years, is really looking at long-term conditions, and hopefully help us inform 20-year horizon plannings as we have the information from the vulnerability assessment in the long term.
So are you really getting the full picture if you're not including the sea level rise and even with the 20-year, because we get the 20-year projections.
Yes.
The changes, and then you have the 50. So just wondering if it's comprehensive if you're neglecting it.
The 20 years will be comprehensive as we can develop the tools. So we're still going to be able to see the sea level rise in the 20-year horizon. That's the goal that we have. But the tool, the groundwater model that we are developing is not fully calibrated and running yet, those scenarios. Anushi, are we going to be able to bring any of that to the Upper East Coast this year?
So for the
Anushi,
You need a mic.
they can't hear you on Zoom.
So for the Upper East Coast plan, we currently do not have a sea level rise scenario. We're doing a 2024 base condition run and then a 2050 future scenario looking at the growth piece. So we're going to include projection increases for all of our use types and look at water supply, right? We're not analyzing sea level rise in the Upper East Coast plan. What we are doing in the water supply vulnerability assessment is looking at growth separate up to 2075. Then we're going to add in a sea level rise piece with 2 different scenarios. And then we're also going to look at the climate scenarios as well. So as Carolina mentioned, it's a 50-year planning horizon looking at that. Now, our goal is to include some sea level rise components into our water supply plans moving forward. I believe the lower East Coast plan that we're trying to pull out from the model right now will have a sea level rise component, and the model spans the entire East Coast. So you will be able to see from those runs what will happen potentially with, we call it our sea level rise scenario 1. It's the intermediate low. You'll see that for a 2045 planning horizon. So you'll get some indication of what could happen in the Upper East Coast.
So, but your modeling will not have any of that sea level rise in it at all?
The modeling, so the lower East Coast plan came out a couple of years ago, and the model was not ready at that time. So we are right now this year putting out those lower East Coast runs, and that has sea level rise in it. One of the scenarios will have sea level rise at a 2045 scenario. That model extends up into the Upper East Coast. So if you look at that run, you'll see the potential vulnerabilities in the Upper East Coast.
And that will be in this vulnerability assessment that we.
It's a separate. It's for the water supply plan for the Lower East Coast.
Okay, for the
Yes.
lower. And then you said that you're accounting for growth. So you account for growth in the 20 plan and the 50 plan as well?
Yes, both will account for growth.
And that would be based off of what current counties' future land use plans, or?
So it's a little bit different than that. What we do is we contract out with Bieber, and we get county projections for population, and then based on per capita use rates, we have the What's Up, which your utilities typically respond back to us every year, and based on that per capita use rate, we'll develop the demands, and we use that information.
There's just so many unknowns with development, especially like in the St. Lucie County area, the way the development's pushing a lot in the west, and it's interesting to see how you could kind of figure that out. So thanks.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Emmy. Any more questions? Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, hi Carolina, Jeff Follett, WSP. Also an Upper East Coast water supply question. How essential / important are the C23, C24 South Reservoir and later on North Reservoir to the water supply situation there? And second part of the question, do you have any information on the funding of those 2 reservoirs at this time?
So funding of the reservoirs, I'm not going to have the latest and greatest update. I can definitely get back to you and confirm. In terms of modeling scenarios, I will start here in terms of the water supply planning, and Nushi, please feel free to add. So as part of the regular water supply planning process, we account for all projects, infrastructure projects that could have an implication on water supply, and this is part of the scenario considerations. So assuming those reservoirs will be completed within this study time frame, which is a yes, they will be part of the simulation and plan formulation process for the water supply plan. So Anushi, do you want to add additional information on that? Thank you.
Sure. So, from a groundwater modeling perspective, we do want to include all the plans that we know are going to come. The one main limitation that we have is if we don't have an operational plan in place, we do not have the ability to run it through the model, right? The model needs to know how much water is coming in, how much water is moving out, how are the operational stages going to be handled. And for some of these projects, while they're authorized and planned, we do not have an operational protocol in place, right? We're still in the process of developing these, so it's a case by case basis. We basically generate a list of all the projects that could come into play, and then we go through and say, okay, on the day that we're going to model, do we have an operational protocol? If we don't, it's difficult to model those projects, right? So I know for a fact the C44 reservoir is in there. I need to go back and check and see where we are with the C23, 24, and see if we have that operational information.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. So the next item that we have in the agenda, Eddie Bolza mentioned just earlier today that the legislative session is over partially, but the main projects are now complete. And I'm going to invite Phil Flood. Thank you, Phil, again for coming in our first meeting of the year to really provide an update on the legislative session and some of the projects that are related to our mission here in Resiliency. Phil, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Well, thanks so much for inviting me. The 2026 legislative session ended 2 weeks ago, and Carolina had asked if I could provide a brief update on some of the resiliency-related items that came up during the session. So let's get started and go to the next slide, please. So the Florida legislature wrapped up the regular session on schedule on March 13th. However, they couldn't come to terms with the budget, and so they're going to return for a special session in April. Throughout the session, nearly 1,900 bills were filed, and a total of 237 of them passed both the House and the Senate chambers. That's about a 12.5% passage rate, which is probably slightly lower than what they normally pass each year. So those bills that passed will now be sent to the governor for his consideration, where he can either sign them into law, veto them, or take no action, in which case they will go into effect in 15 days. So there were a total of 86 bills that I found that were filed that involved resiliency, flooding, or sea level rise. And of those, only 2 of them passed this year, and they specifically involved resiliency. So next slide, please. So the first bill is SB 302. It's titled Coastal Resiliency, and it involves primarily aquatic preserves. The bill provides enhanced protection of select aquatic preserves by limiting certain dredging activities and authorizes nature-based construction options. It also establishes guidelines for statewide establishes guidelines for statewide coastal resiliency. So it would be outside of the aquatic reserves, anything within the state. Specifically of interest, the bill allows nature-based structures, including living shorelines, seagrass and vegetation planting, and green or hybrid green-gray stormwater infrastructure within aquatic preserves to strengthen coastal resiliency and preserve the marine environments. Next slide, please. The bill also requires the Department of Environmental Protection to develop statewide guidelines and to conduct rulemaking for nature-based coastal resiliency projects. Included among some of the rule requirements are incentives for new strategies and technologies for coastal protection, incentives to encourage nature-based projects through the Resilient Florida program, promote public awareness and education on the value of nature-based solutions to coastal resiliency, and of course to develop specific permitting criteria. The coastal resiliency was one of the first bills signed by the governor and will go into effect this July 1st. DEP has until January 1st of 2027 to develop the statewide guidelines and to initiate rulemaking. Next slide, please. The second resiliency bill is HB 1417, Department of Environmental Protection. So this is a wide-ranging bill that addresses numerous program areas within the department. It's some 97 some odd pages in length. So among some of the provisions in the bill, it repeals the Environmental Regulatory Commission in an effort to expedite rulemaking. It also revises solar facility permit requirements, expands public-private partnerships for coastal resiliency, updates sewer system regulations, and adjusts air pollution fee deadlines. Of particular interest, it identifies coastal resiliency projects as a qualifying project under the public-private partnership law, which allows for revenue sharing and will expedite permitting. A public-private partnership, those are contractual agreements between the public and private entities that are intended to increase private sector involvement, private sector funding of public infrastructure projects. The next bill, please. So the bill creates a new provision to encourage public sector investment in coastal resiliency projects by authorizing long-term revenue sharing agreements. It will also streamline the permitting process, expand public outreach, and allow the use of vocational schools to train workers in specialized resiliency construction. So the bill was also signed into law by the governor and goes into effect on July 1. Next slide. There's two additional bills of particular interest to everybody here, and those are the general appropriation bills that were passed by both the House and the Senate. The House's proposed budget totals $113.6 billion, while the Senate's proposal includes $115 billion in spending. So they're $1.4 billion apart and have some pretty significant differences in some of their funding priorities. The House and Senate have agreed to meet in special session after the Easter and Passover holidays to negotiate the budget that will ultimately be sent to the governor for his consideration. Next slide. So I've identified just a few items of interest to most of us that are included in the two budgets. The House has proposed approximately $350 million for Everglades restoration, which is roughly half of the Senate's proposed budget. So this is very similar to what they initially proposed last year before they ultimately matched the Senate's recommendation. And of course, we're hopeful that they will do that once again this year. And we know that the governor is putting pressure on them to do that very thing. So as far as Resilient Florida program, both the House and the Senate have recommended $100 million in funding. In addition, the House has proposed $10 million for a Resilient Florida planning program, while the Senate is a little more generous, recommending $20 million. I know several folks in the audience there participate in the state beach restoration program, so I've added those funding levels as well. The House is recommending $50 million, while the Senate has proposed $64 million. So these funding programs and all the other budget differences will need to be negotiated during the budget conference when they return to Tallahassee for next week's special session. That'll be sometime probably in the middle of April. So. And that concludes my updates, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Phil. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to have a break. So it's 10:54 now. I think we should come back at 11:10 to continue the next session. Thank you so far, everyone. We'll be back at 11:10.
And then I
Hi there, we're going to get started soon.
Okay, it's 11:10. I wanted to talk a little bit more, but I think we need to start getting back. Um, so, are we ready to restart?
Hi, can you please take your seats?
Can you please take the seats?
Hi
Okay.
there, we're going to get started soon.
I see our speaker walking towards the mount, Dr. Mount walking towards the. Okay, so we're really excited to invite Dr. Mount, the Assistant Chief Resilience Officer for Broward County. He's going to be talking about presenting the latest updates on the Broward Countywide Resiliency Plan 2025 and integration into regional strategies. Thank you, Greg, for being here with us.
Thank you so much. And I think my presentation will kind of segue nicely into the next part where we talk to the district and the core about Section 203 and all those kind of wonderful things. If you haven't heard me talk before, and I haven't mentioned Countywide Risk Assessment and Resilience Plan, I don't know where that was, but maybe it was like a robot-focused talk. So of course I have to talk about the Resilience Plan today. If you haven't been to our website, every time you click, we save a tree somewhere. No, I think the website's really interesting to go and just kind of check it out, click around, see what we're offering, and then, I always like to hear suggestions how we can make it better. And then moving from the resilience plan more towards implementation, which I'm really excited to talk about today. I haven't spoken about implementation before, so this is the first time for that. We'll talk about some Broward projects, and then I'll leave it for the Army Corps and the district to talk about 203. So the other day I got sent to a career fair, and I'm probably not the person to go to a career fair because my trajectory to where I am today was not a straight line. I think my wife still asks me what I'm going to be when I grow up. But a lot of it is perspective and audience. And I think as I look back at like the last 5 years of the resilience plan, I think the perspective of what we see and how we show it becomes ever more so important. I was just a fly on the wall. I'm better seen, not heard. I was talking to people earlier. And when the young students and high school seniors and underclassmen, undergraduates and underclassmen, were asked about, what they saw as being a problem with Broward County, climate never came up, which was, I'm screaming inside, I want to talk about this. But flooding and climate and things like that didn't come up. And I don't think it's an issue of how we're talking about it, but perhaps where we're talking about it. Everybody here in the room today, we can all argue, that's one of the most pressing issues right now. But for some of the younger folks, it wasn't, which was interesting, and I was able to have some great conversations. And it's this perspective, how can we shift this perspective from what you see and, and generalize it to like what you're really seeing? Could we all agree in the room, like this is a really pretty picture? I'd worked drones into my talk like I usually do. This is a drone photo, right? If I tell you this is a drone photo from April of 2023, do you start kind of twitching? Because if I pan down the same photo from along Andrews to Broward to downtown Fort Lauderdale, everything's flooded, right? So it's how we see things and how we share things and how we kind of have that conversation. I think that perspective and that audience shift is kind of where we're going. We've thought about this at Broward County for quite a while. The elected officials have moved planning requirements and things that lead to more resilient construction, since the early 2010s, generating those sea level rise projections and the priority planning area map. I know there's some consultants in the room that have had to deal with this, and you've heard me talk about this before. But what's really kind of the forward-thinking stuff is that future conditions map series, where we start talking about future conditions, groundwater elevations, flood elevations, all those kind of fun things, and where they sit out there in the 2060, 2070 range, and all the updates we've made since then. The resilience standards that kind of are derivatives based on that are the drainage infrastructure, and then of course seawalls or tidal flood barriers. So we have these calls that we had years ago for planning. And then, how can we start thinking about building more resiliently? How can we incorporate this into code and future land use and all those kind of fun things? and then, you know, the implementation of those planning ideas and seeing that cursor move a little bit down the line. Now, of course, we've done construction all the way along, but the focus on resilient construction, you know, is of a more recent thing, especially with Broward County funded resilient construction. So the Broward County has had the integrated water resources plan for more than 20 years, and this has brought alternative water supplies and water reuse and grants for those activities to the municipalities. This past year, the Board of County Commissioners set aside $1.5 million just for resilience funding, which was the first opportunity for that to come through as a grant program. The commissioners were able to leverage $1.5 million towards $1.5 million to $11 million of construction projects. And I'm happy to say that we executed the ILA on a Friday. They broke ground on a Monday. It happened that quickly. So we took some grant funding. We chose we asked for projects that were, what's in your hopper right now? What can we go? What can we fund? What can we move and do quickly rather than have like a 2 or 3 year long project? What's going on right now? Where can we contribute, offset some of your costs with the municipalities? And we had some really great projects come in. On the screen, you have a picture of a culvert. This year, we were focusing on culverts and moving water and making those connections so that as future projects with the Army Corps and working on the first order drainage systems, the pumps and conveyance systems that are there, how we can better feed into those systems. So this shows a giant culvert. They're going to rip up the road, replace the culvert. I'm very excited to see construction equipment moving. It brings in my 8-year-old self, and I'm going to be spending a bunch of time there taking pictures and enjoying it. In addition to this, of course, we have the Section 203 effort led with the South Florida Water Management District. You know, we hope to see more of these projects come out with this. And then some more pictures, just because I can't help myself. You know, this was exciting just to, you know, get a phone call on a Friday. Hey, Greg, can we get that executed? Yeah. We'll get it. Like, what's the rush? Well, Monday. We've already set up on the site, so we want to have that signed, which was exciting to me. So, the resilience plan. I'm sure you've heard myself or Dr. Hirado talk about this before. This has occupied about the last 4 years of our time here at the Resilience Unit at Broward County. How we would come up with this public-facing, easily usable, you know, a blueprint for the future, and how we could kind of bring that all together under one plan, right? Involved a lot of community outreach, significant levels of risk assessment, economic modeling, looking at what these impacts with flooding and future conditions and the compound effects of such will lead for the future, and have a better idea so that we can communicate with the business community about what these impacts we might just see. Came up with an adaptation plan, and then we built this handy dandy online platform. In the past, I've made a joke here, depending on how awake you are in the middle of the night is what plan you choose to read. Right, so the executive summary is short and sweet. The full plan, 600 or so odd pages. There's a lot of information within those texts, but I think it's more an audience. You know, what is your audience looking for, and what are we going to share with the folks that have the impact on the ground and that are most impacted by these things? So the executive summary kind of is a one size catch-all. Let's tell you about the plan in an easy to read and digest material, and then you can choose your own adventure forward from that. But that's like the highlights, and you can read more into that as well. Tab Alt Tab. See, I'm learning technology today. All right, let's go that one. Okay, here we go. So you should see the resilientbroward.com website. Has anybody been here before? One person, 2 people, 3, 4, okay. I'm telling you, you know, each click lends more money towards resilience efforts. It doesn't. You know, that's not true. But hopefully this serves as like an idea to show and showcase what we're doing. If you poked around the website a little bit, I'm going to do that virtually here with you. I can kind of see my cursor, so that's exciting. We have the Resilient Broward plans here. You can see which one you want to read. You're more than welcome to look at the overview or the full plan. Again, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you really need to sleep, go for that full plan. The plan development, how we got there. This will work through step by step all the considerations that we made, who we worked with, how we worked with them, and all the input that we gathered. This whole effort was led by a steering committee made up of members of the community, members of the business community, folks that are in the know that see how all these things work from various scales. And then we spent some time meeting people where they were and having conversations with folks that this directly impacts. My experience in Broward is very different than other people's experiences in Broward. So we casted a wide net. We talked to school-age children. We talked to high schoolers. We talked to college folks. We talked to HOA groups. We met everybody where we could. And then the exciting part to me are the tools, right? So we talked a little bit about modeling today and sharing our results. I think this is part of one of the most exciting things that we've developed here. I can't see that far, but that's okay. So if we don't do anything, if we just operate under current parameters, you know, we're not going to put in culverts, we're not going to put in pumps, we're just going to go with it. We pick 2.0 feet of sea level rise, and we'll do a 100-year storm, and we'll do no surge. So this is a very rainy, wet season day. We've had these before, kind of like an ETA, but without the run-up to ETA. We didn't have ground, this doesn't show the ground saturated conditions right here, but this is a very stormy Tuesday in Broward County, right? We can see some of the colors here that show us what the flooding levels are, and then we can zoom all the way in, or you can type into the address bar where you want to see. And as you zoom in, you'll see numbers start to come up. So you can see that here we're predicting or modeling that you'll have over 2 feet of flooding. You know, so this covers the entire county, and what most people do if they live in Broward County, they type in their address, and you know, they see what's in their immediate environment, their immediate ecosystem. I know today we all had to drive here, so I'm encouraging people when you look at this and you go to this website, that not only do you type in your own address to see what your risks are potentially, but also where you shop, where you work, and then the roads that you take to get there. You know, oftentimes when we've had these large storms, we're stranded somewhere. You know, so the connection between where you are and where you want to be or where you have to be is also something that we're thinking about and spending some time on. So we're working a lot with the roadways and, you know, where the flooding's happening. Can we get to somewhere? If we have to evacuate, can we move people? And seeing what those worst case scenarios are. What I really like about this is if we go to compare scenarios, I can start throwing things at this problem. So if I talk about tier 1, I'm talking about, you know, enhanced conveyance, enhanced swales, reclaiming swales, pumps, secondary and tertiary system improvements, all those kind of fun things. So if I pick the same 2 feet, I pick the same 100-year rainfall, I pick the same no surge scenario, you'll see the colors start to come up. And even though I'm a quantitative kind of person, sometimes just looking at colors makes me feel better. And you can see the decrease from the reds on the right-hand side, right? You're looking at it that way. Yep, right-hand side. So if we do institute some of those tier 1 adaptations, if we do some of those mitigation strategies, we do show an overall decrease in the amount of flooding that's there, and we can prove this quantitatively as well. But just for that visual impact, we can share this with the community, and we can show if we do this, you know, these are some of the outcomes that we'll have. What's really kind of exciting here too is if you click on the little camera, I have an exclamation point. Here we go. Maybe we'll have a picture. Oh. Bear with me, I'm looking at something like 100 feet away. This creates a 360-degree image of what the flooding with that scenario will look like at the location. So we picked some iconic spots across Broward to showcase those potentials that you'll see. Now, in the background, I'm happy to share, and I hope that you'll join us at the upcoming Climate Compact Summit in November. We're working on a tool and an applet that would take your picture, you know, your Google Street View of your place in front of your house perhaps, or in place of your business, or in place of your school, and you can talk into the app and you can say, you know, show me a category 3 storm in front of Greg's house with this amount of sea level rise at this future date. And the computer and the AI will take that Google Street View image and it'll put flooding on top of that image, and that'll be able to be created just about anywhere in Broward County. You can do it wider. You can take it beyond Broward County, but it'll be linked to our flood maps and our flood models that are linked here. So you'd have an accurate representation of what a Category 3 storm with 2 foot of sea level rise and all those other kind of conditions are at that location. The AI component is really interesting. Like I said, I was at a career day the other day, and I'd say half the college students that were there were working in some sort of AI, tech industry, engineering, using AI, if not only for schoolwork, but also for things that they were doing on the side. One of the young gentlemen I met was doing full stack development on his downtime in college. So that was kind of exciting. He has an app and a following of over a couple 100,000 people that he's able to use the camera on his phone to track and map and do things. So when we're reaching out to folks and we're sharing these kind of tools, perhaps there's improvements that we can make. There's a new version of this that we hope to share at the Compact Summit that will be AI enabled. You'll be able to have a better user experience. You'll still be able to do everything that's shown here, but more intuitive perhaps for folks that are more using or that use digital more in their day-to-day lives than I perhaps do. Also here, which is kind of exciting, if you're into numbers and all those kind of fun things. There we go. Little tiny cursor. Greg is blind. We have an adaptations dashboard. We have a benefits dashboard that gives the full results of our economic analysis. And we have a project tracker. With the resilience plan, we proposed a set of mitigation projects across the entire county to improve the flood conditions that are shown in the model. And those are illustrated on the map. You can choose by municipality, commission district, drainage district, all those kind of fun things. I don't mean to pick on anybody, so we'll just go here. We'll look at commission districts real quick. You can highlight the district. It'll zoom you in, or it should zoom you in. And it'll show you all the proposed projects in that area. So as we're moving from planning to implementation to construction, these projects here are the ones that would most fit the criteria, that would show benefits that we can model in the resilience plan. And that kind of leads, if we're looking at comparison to CIPs and stormwater master plans and those things, to see how the natural nexus of those projects come together. And perhaps that's something that, working together, we can provide funding for in the future. We're really happy to see these first 3 grant projects, breaking ground. One's already going. Next one should happen the next few weeks, and the third a couple weeks after, that we can start showcasing, the positive results that these are making, and being able to leverage that money and show what a little bit of money can really turn into down the road. So with that, Alt-Tab. I go back to my presentation. There we go. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. If you see anything on the website that you think could be improved, or have any comments or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. We're kind of in this beta test, getting all this information in, show us what's working, what's not working. Hey, this could be improved. And please feel free to reach out to me with anything that you might consider. Thank you so much for your time today.
Before questions, I just wanted, if you don't mind
Sure.
staying here. So I want to show some slides on the 203, just because we have been talking about the integration. In fact, we came back from a trip. We spent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in DC talking to some of the congressmen and Army Corps staff from all levels to talk exactly about this in terms of how we have a regional system and how the federal role is there in terms of the needs that need to be done on a federal level, but with the local and a little bit more local and still regional aspects embedded in the whole strategy, which was really well received. Really having the ability to go to propose a project that have some of the elements well structured there, but it's also tying to everything else that needs to happen at the local level was very attractive. I think really, really well received. And the ability to be able to do that is because of a long history. I think from 20 years, right? The county and the water management district have been utilizing tools and planning assessments that have been aligned. So from FEMA maps, from Army Corps studies, our level of service, and the resiliency plan right now that the county just demonstrated, and the 203, 216, we all utilize the same tools, always improving the tools and having the ability to look at the regional and the local is only happening because of that. So just quickly, I think if we can share those slides, I don't know how to do it. We have here condition from a past that is driving a lot of those conversations right now in terms of risks. So back in the 40s, 20s, there were significant flooding that happened in this area. I don't need to go back to this, all of you know. But like that drove the construction of a system, right? The CNSF Florida system that is a federal system in nature, regional system in nature, that that is now having to be revamped. The system is 7 years old. Some of those structures that we are now proposing to touch, they are way past their design life and underperforming given all those changing conditions. So extensive development that happened there, sea level rise. So this is a gravity system, and we have the need to be able to discharge water, restore the capacity to discharge water that was lost in the system, and really looking at how we can advance resiliency on an integrated way. So what we have right now and what we presented is really robust, resilient infrastructure that continues to provide those protections under those changing conditions. We have flood resiliency. We are achieving flood resiliency here while maintaining water supply reliability. We have a lot of those well fields located right there. So as we plan for those flood resiliency strategies and reducing the major risks that were identified in the resiliency plan and also on this 203, we are looking at, of course, maintaining water supply and ecosystem restoration. At the high level, when we present this, there is less we can do, especially in the dense urban areas, in terms of integrating fully like storage areas, like large storage that would be part of the regional system that we could claim additional like nature-based and ecological functions. But when we look at the integrated plan at the local level and the regional strategy, we see that. We see those ties and we see some of those boxes also being checked. So anyway, there is significant lessons learned that from the last 20 plus years in ecosystem restoration, we have been advancing NEPA processes in all of this. We have been looking at ways that we can really provide flood resiliency and enhancing the system really to ensure this next level of protection to the communities and the business there. So what we presented, it's coming, and we are reaching a major milestone. That's why I'm repeating and sharing this with you too, is because we are going to be presenting this final plan to the Corps in less than a month. So what we have there as a recommended plan, we are stepping into a recommended plan right now, is really the alternative RO. So we have projects proposing every basin, cost-effective projects proposing every basin in the county. All the primary structures in the system are improved, 5 new expanded pump stations, and 3 that will have just the structure itself. We also have canal enhancements being proposed. We have redundancy in pumps, bays, and gates. We have also some monitoring stations that we are proposing to effectively operate the system, minimizing impacts to each community and really optimizing how we do that. So all those adverse impacts to nearby areas are mitigated or minimized. And then we ensure that we have really a robust and adaptive system that will help us on long-term structure protection performance. Broward County has even better numbers. For the federal structure itself, those are some of the benefits, again, comprehensive benefits. I think the local plan from the county gets to $4 billion in avoided property damage. We have from this 2 to 2.7 from the regional projects. Less business interruption, more jobs, a stronger economy. People benefited 1.35 just from the regional project. The county has new numbers. Protection of critical infrastructure. So 20% of the critical infrastructure in the basin comes from the regional project. Environmental quality, protection against saltwater intrusion, and lower insurance rates. We didn't get to the number of reduction in flood insurance costs, but Broward County did from the local projects as well. Again, significant reduction in flood insurance premiums. As I said, the next step is really delivering the final report to the Army Corps end of April. And we'll have still a final corrected report that is going to be part of the final authorization. Final authorization that we are aiming to achieve by within the WARDA 2026. I'm talking here on behalf of the Water Management District, but I know we're going to transition to the Army Corps, who has been the key partner on getting us here with the initial 216 authorization to the federal activities and technical assistance that have been provided through this whole process, and really getting to a point that we are here integrating all of those strategies with the countywide resiliency plan and our plan here at the Water Management District. So I hope we achieve some of the goals, just to start talking to you about this, the integration about local, regional, and federal projects as well. I don't know if you want to do some question and answer now and then transition to the core, or we can go straight to the core. Team, do you want to jump in? And yeah, and then we do questions at the end.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. All right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about rebranding this morning, but I want to just emphasize what Carolina just talked about in terms of the partnerships between the Water Management District and Broward County, and the long-standing relationship, sharing of data, developing of tools, coming to common goals, and then the Corps coming in and helping out towards the end of this. That's really a great example of how we all need to be looking at projects moving forward, especially from the federal side. Those partnerships at the local and state level are going to be key as we move into the future to help support federal work as well. So I think that's a really good transition and a great example of how that can be successful to get things done at the local level. All right. So, like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about a rebranding. You're like, what are you talking about? That doesn't have anything to do with resilience, but I promise it does, and I'll tie it all in. Okay, so I want to start off with kind of big picture from the federal perspective. I think everybody's probably aware that the Department of Defense changed its name to the Department of War, going back to historic missions last year. And the Corps is kind of rebranding as well to kind of help how we support the War Department missions, but that really does tie into resiliency. So some of give you a small history lesson. Traditional Department of War roles were stemming back to the beginning of our country, and the Corps actually, we celebrated our 250th birthday last year, so the Corps has actually been around longer than our country has. I know our colonel likes to throw that information out there, but the Corps has been supporting resilience and the building of this nation since it started. Back then, of course, it was focused on national defense, military logistics and supply, fortification, base development, and resource management. And the Corps played its role supporting those missions through military engineering, combat, garrison support, infrastructure construction, but also did have civil works missions back then as our nation was starting, from river and harbor improvements to flood control navigation. Over time, the missions have adapted. Our current Department of War priorities, and I'm sure everybody's heard the peace through strength mantra, in defense of the homeland, Western Hemisphere preeminence, supercharging our industrial base and strategic deterrence. Again, I promise I'll tie this back into resilience. The Corps is still supporting those roles, and we've adapted our missions as well over time to align with the overall Department of War and how that is part of our national security. We still have our military programs, but from a civil works perspective, what that means is supporting strategic navigation improvements, our port projects, keeping our waterways open and available for commerce, flood and storm risk management, so that's inland and coastal, protecting our communities, protecting our economy to make that stronger, supports our national defense. Aquatic ecosystem restoration, our big projects like SERP, those are building infrastructure, restoring environment, which has not only environmental benefits, but also has water supply benefits and storm risk management benefits as well. So all of those tie into national defense, national security, and national resiliency. All right, next. Enough of the history lesson. But what does that kind of mean? We have to have a unified front, and that points to exactly what Carolina and Greg just talked about, is that collaborative approach. In order for us to have resilient communities, we need to work together to identify what those look like, but then what are all the pieces that go into that? What are responsibilities at each level of government? And for the Corps, and I'll talk about our kind of transition a little bit, that means community support and many different levels, not just in coordination. But this is going to be even more key as we move forward, trying to make sure our communities stay resilient, which is a focus of our national security as well. All right, I like this diagram. You probably can't really read it, but I think it's a really good example. Kind of shows all the things that go into community resiliency. Some of these are important from the local level, some of these are important at the state level, and some are important to the national level. But all of these different things, whether they be like navigation or shore protection, ecosystems, community partnerships, infrastructure protection, fuel, fire protection, water and wastewater, things that go into local economy, things that support national economy. It's important for each community in the region to have a common vision. A lot of the resilience planning and the things that Greg talked about, that is the resilience plan. That is the vision for Broward County, what they see as their long-term community resilience. But that's important for everybody to be considering, not only at the local level, but how that fits into the regional level. And then how does that fit into the national perspective as well? So that's really moving forward from the federal perspective. These community visions and what's important at the community level are going to be really important to how does the federal government play into helping with those things. And that advocacy, going to DC, like Carolina just talked about, those are the types of things that go a long way into helping determine federal priorities as well. So advocacy at the local level, having a focus, having a plan, and identifying where the federal interest can come in and help. Those are going to be really important as we move forward working with projects, not only at the state, but with the local level as well. All right. So here's where the rebranding from the Corps side comes in. So some of you, or maybe all of you, are aware, back in February, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, Mr. Tell, announced a sweeping set of change initiatives that are supposed to be the biggest changes in the way the Corps does business since the 1980s. And that's really trying to be more efficient, more focused, get things done faster, stay within our mission areas. Over the time, our missions and requirements have expanded. There's been lots of things thrown on us, which makes things take longer and cost more. Nobody wants things to take longer and cost more. So the idea is that these initiatives spread all across our different business lines, different ways we work, are supposed to help the Corps work faster and get things done. Maintaining focus on our missions and key projects that are identified not only here in the state of Florida, but around the country. So one of those I'll focus on is kind of how our planning process will work moving forward. Some of you may have heard about this rapid planning paradigm that we are now in. So all of our planning type projects, things like BBC or things like the Section 216 or Shingle Creek, all planning projects moving forward, and some that are ongoing are adapting to this as well, are going to have to fit within this new planning paradigm. And the purpose of this is to make sure things get done in 3 years, get done for $3 million, and come up with a 35% engineering design at the end of them that can be approved and go to construction. I think that sounds good to everybody. Get things done faster, get things built, right? That's the intent. As anybody who's worked in Florida knows, our projects tend to be big a lot of times and more complex. So how that fits into this paradigm is really breaking things down to smaller, early actionable elements, if you will. What are the things that we can focus on, get a study done, get it authorized, then move on to the next thing? So how does that all tie back into what I was talking about from community perspective, from the regional perspective, is to really help this succeed, we're going to need more support from local entities, whether that be focusing on data collection or this regional type planning, to see how these tiny elements fit into the big picture. That will help kind of determine what are the things that are actionable and can be moved forward more quickly. So new paradigm for all of us. We're trying to figure out how this will work. I wanted to introduce this concept here so that you guys are all tracking. There are a lot of ongoing studies, and then a new Southern Everglades study, which is just kicking off, that is strictly fitting into this new planning process and will be an example of how this can be successful, I think. I'll be happy to answer questions on this because I know I still have some, so I'm sure you will as well. All right. Ongoing work, and what are the things that we are doing right now? I'll focus 216 from the flood risk management perspective. We're still working, developing our final array of alternatives that should be ready in the next several weeks. We'll be looking at scheduling a meeting to bring all that information out to the public and to our stakeholders to take a look at what that final array will look like, get feedback on that, and then get the modeling done on that so we can get to a TSP. That's still, we're still targeting a draft report March of next year that will identify what the plan will be for the Miami River basins in Miami-Dade County. Also flood risk management, Shingle Creek, up in Osceola County. We are similar place working on developing that final array of alternatives to get the modeling going on that. I think we'll have data and information to share with the public in the May-June timeframe of this year, and have a draft report in the September timeframe of this year. So progressing nicely on that one as well. BBCer, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, also working towards a draft report by the end of this fiscal year. I think there's a TSP milestone scheduled in June. How these projects are affected by rapid planning, we're still working through that, and we'll provide more information on path forward as we determine that. But I want to highlight those three in particular. And then the Southern Everglades project, which is also part of SERP, that one is kicking off, and I think we'll be looking at having public meetings coming up in the next month or so. So be on the lookout for those. But those will be a really good example of what rapid planning looks like and how the core process will look on all of our projects moving forward. All right, and then the last one I wanted to highlight is EAA Reservoir, which is another SERP project. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. You know, that has been accelerated with a construction completion by the end of 2029. So that is moving very quickly, lots of construction going on, lots of partnership with the Water Management District on pieces of that they're taking on. So again, that's a new way of thinking of can we get things done faster, and those partnerships are extremely important in order to make that happen. The other piece of that I wanted to highlight is the operational planning. Some of you are probably familiar with the SEP Ops that's developing a first iteration, first increment of operations for features of the Central Everglades Planning Project, as those come online to make sure that we can start getting early benefits. But associated with the reservoir, there's also going to be operational planning, not only on how the reservoir functions, but how water from Lake Okeechobee is moved to the reservoir, and then how it moves from the reservoir through the Everglades down to Florida Bay, Biscayne Bay. So that operational planning will be kicking off in the not too distant future, because the goal will be to have an operational plan ready once the reservoir is constructed at the end of 2029. So lots of things going on with construction planning and operations, and all in partnership with Water Management District, and having support from all of our local stakeholders is key to success for all of this. So that's my takeaway. We're all key to this. Plan at the local level, figure out how what you need fits into the bigger picture, and ask questions on how resources that you have can best be utilized to get projects on the ground that are important to each of you. And with that, I'm done, and I will take questions. And if there are any for Greg or Carolina.
Excellent. Okay, so we're opening up for questions to all three of us. I don't know, Tim, if you want to sit here, but yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Amy Eason, Martin County. I have a question for you. On the website, is it ADA accessible?
Broward County.
Yeah, so everything was run through the checker. I believe everything could be translated as well from that. And then all the documents that are uploaded are all PDF and ADA.
So like all the mapping and all that, so if they were to come in and they were to choose something and then they would know that map was that, is that how that works? I'm just curious because I've been trying to do something like that at my county.
I'd have to check on that.
Good, any more questions? Yes.
Hello. For Greg, I had a question. You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation about the future floodplain mapping products that Broward County has put out, and I think I saw it was maybe the last set was published in 2021 or a couple years ago. Do you mind just elaborating on how those future conditions map have, shaped policy, development, and how the resilience plan, and some of the vulnerability assessment work you guys have done, will that be feeding into an update of those future floodplain maps? Or I'm just kind of curious if there are any next steps planned for future floodplain maps.
So I think for future updates, we're all in the same boat with what we can do and what we're preempted from doing. So at this time, we're looking at what the resilience plan has told us and potential updates from there. We do have a policy recommendation section in the back of the resilience plan. However, based on preemptions from the state and other things going on at this point, there's no planned updates at this time.
Yeah.
So Karina Castillo from the Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer Department. So this is for Tim. Has there been any additional guidance in terms of expressing capability on projects that have already been completed, specifically for Jacksonville?
When you say already completed, you mean like authorized that are awaiting construction?
Yeah, correct. Or projects, for example, like the Back Bay, the projects that were included in the 2020 word, right? 20.
Sure. As far as like the planning efforts, we're trying to wrap those up, right? Getting to a point where either we can get to an authorization or at least get to a report that can be useful for picking pieces and moving them forward. So those are still ongoing efforts. It's not expected that for any of our ongoing, this is nationwide, any ongoing planning efforts are going to get more money or more time to finish. So we've got to figure out how we can get to a good endpoint with all of the projects that we have, or the feasibility studies that we have. And they're also identifying key projects all over the country that would be core priority projects to get funded and designed, constructed, whether they're ongoing projects or new projects. Those are kind of how things are going to be looking moving forward, is what are key projects for the Corps across the nation, and getting those things done, then moving to the next one. So that's why I think the advocacy at the local level is going to be really important to determine what those priorities are.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to talk about the Corps, but I want to just cover the part of the local level advocacy, and I think it's really work. It's not just advocacy. It's like having the ability to complete those assessments coming from the local level and integrating to a region as applicable, right? But having the ability to really develop those initial feasibility steps, I think it becomes more and more critical. And I think one issue we had in the beginning of this whole study, the 216, was the area was large in nature. I mean, and I remember tons of meetings that we were all debating how we can look at such a large and complex area with a process that has sometimes this has in many times a lot of limitations. But again, because some of those tools were developed, right? It's the tools, it's the coordination with the local level, it's the true understanding of what is happening there locally to be able to translate all of that to the federal level is the key part. So based on what we have been seeing, I think that's the way to be able to continue those next steps. So advancing as much as we can the tools, the understanding, the feasibility steps at the more local level, and helping to translate all of that towards like the federal path for implementation. Learning how to break down the problems somehow. And I think that was the struggle we had in the beginning because yes, it's a large area, it's big, but having the ability to, I think to break down, you first need to have the big picture understanding, right? And sometimes you need some kind of large scale assessment done. And then, yes, finding the best way you can break down in smaller areas that you can maintain somehow links to areas that are impacting and assessing in a way that the problem is condensed to that specific area. So it's, I mean, we all walk those steps. Engineering in nature is learning how to break down problems, but that's certainly very critical now. And I'm going to take just a minute to just emphasize one more thing. I think the link to the local communities is also reinforced when you have that true federal, regional, local coordination. It's impossible to really be able to get to the local real needs and understand and read the local if this is not done. The federal we have limitations being at the state regional level. The federal has even more limitations. So building those bridges is so essential to the successes of those projects, and having the ability to know who are the key players, to receive the comments that are relevant. And sometimes we just, I mean, if we leave all of these to the federal level, they will not even reach the right person, right? Not even be able to give the necessary information to the right people, to the right, to whoever needs to receive that information and the right amount of information. So having this whole process from the local to the federal level is key on that sense too. So we are communicating right with the communities. We are getting the information that they need at the level that they need, and we are getting to the right communities, to the right stakeholders. So anyway, I think that's going to be key. Stakeholder participation is very important. We receive several comments throughout the end closing of this 203 process, and I want to just say one more thank you to everybody who sent us the comments and the letters of support and comments to the whole exercise. I think we can wrap up this session. Thank you, Greg, so much for bringing and presenting. And I mean, it's a good time to have all those plans kind of laid out and out there. So it's great to see the progress there with all the local processes in Broward, projects in Broward, our 203 reaching those milestones and really getting the path towards the federal. Thank you, team. Thank you, Jenny, for being here as well. Okay, we're going to go around the table. That's our last activity here today. It's great to hear from you all. So I'm going to start on my right here with the folks from Miami-Dade, Christian, Karina.
Alrighty, Christian Camerath with Miami-Dade County. On behalf of our Department of Environmental Resources Management, I wanted to mention three things. So last week was Miami Climate Week, so there was a ton of events and activities going on. I think a lot of folks here were able to participate. Notably University of Miami had a Resilience 365 conference, and there was some interesting discussions about water, nature-based solutions. Something that might be coming out of that is continuing collaboration with some of our partners in the Dutch consulate. So there's they're trying to establish some further knowledge exchange between Miami-Dade, South Florida, and the water management professionals in the Netherlands. There was the release or the publishing of what's called the Miami Resilience Meter. So this was born out of a lot of work I know Karina was involved with in the past, the Resilient 305 strategy and the Resilient 305 Research Collaborative that involves University of Miami, Florida International University, Miami-Dade College, and some other municipal partners. So it's basically a data dashboard at this point that has a ton of socioeconomic, but also infrastructure-related data, and it's tied to metrics from our original Resilient 305 strategy. So, you know, it's been 5 or 6 years since that was originally released, and so it's hopefully a powerful tool to kind of help any stakeholder explore what types of changes or metrics you know, are being affected by some of the implementation of that Resilient 305 strategy. Second, this is in partnership with the South Florida Water Management District and Florida International University. There's an existing National Fish and Wildlife Foundation planning grant that we're really excited about, focused on the C7 or Little River Basin, and it's talking a lot about identifying and modeling green and hybrid green-gray infrastructure projects in that part of the watershed. And we have some upcoming community engagement that Dr. Tiffany Troxler is helping head up along with other partners starting as early as next week. And then lastly, on our work with the Army Corps of Engineers on our Back Bay coastal storm risk management study, broken into 2 phases. The first phase, we're still submitting appropriations requests through our congressional delegation to kick off the design phase for some of the critical infrastructure floodproofing, potential floodproofing of critical businesses, as well as kicking off the nature-based solution pilot program. So we're waiting for those federal appropriations and getting our match set up at the local level. Phase 2 of that feasibility study is ongoing, basically looking at additional focus areas, and we mostly non-structural type of activities, but we expect a tentatively selected plan now in mid-June and a draft report released in mid-August. So there'll be additional webinars and engagement in Miami-Dade later this summer. So that's it.
I can really quickly from the water and sewer. We're taking the opportunity through our water conservation division and the resilience division to kind of update our SOPs related to the drought warning because, you know, it had been a while. So we're taking, really looking at internally what we need to do, and then also with our Office of Public Engagement, you know, what are the messaging, revisiting the messaging around not only, you know, the irrigation and stuff like that, but also the importance of water conservation. So we're in the process of, you know, doing a lessons learned in the middle of also communicating about what's the ongoing conditions. We're also really taking a look at how the grant programs, the grant money that we've received as a department are really offsetting our capital improvement projects, since that's kind of becoming a topic of discussion within, you know, a tight budget situation. So really strengthening the value of grants. And then the last thing is really, we have our water, every drop counts, water poster conservation program. We're having the award ceremony next month. So I know, you know, the Department of Solid Waste had theirs, and then I think the state one is also. So that's next month before our commission meeting, and really excited about that because it's always, you know, nice to see how the students are thinking about water conservation. So that's upcoming next month.
Hi, I'm Aiden with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's Resilient Florida program. I don't have any additional updates, just what Eddie had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. keeping an eye on your emails with the upcoming deadlines of our grant program later this year.
Scarlett Cantley with Indian Trail Improvement District. I am the Administration and Grants Coordinator there, and we are beginning construction on our canal outfall structure in our MO canal. This is our first Resilient Florida grant that we were eligible for. And just to piggyback on what was said earlier, deadlines, this is one that has a very hard deadline, and because of the time for getting our Army Corps of Engineer permit, and now we're running into supply issues. So if you think you can't meet the deadline, get in touch with DEP, with your manager, and let them know what you're facing, because they do have, I don't want to say a workaround, but they did have a solution to where even if we don't finish the project all the way, we can do it, where we are at the deadline, and then still continue afterwards with any matching funds or anything. So there is a way they do work with you. So communication is key. I am learning that communication is key. And that's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Valentina Alvarez. I'm with Palm Beach County in the Division of Built Environment and Risk Reduction. Just some things I've been working on. We're hosting a flooding workshop for our municipalities on May 8th. Kind of the goal of the workshop is to help and provide resources to our municipalities to help them move beyond their vulnerability assessments. So whether that be for their planning grants to kind of identify projects, or towards like implementation funding, mostly through the Resilient Florida program. So that's on May 8th. And besides that, I've been working with some county departments on preparing some Resilient Florida grants for this funding cycle. So working with the Parks Department specifically for now. And our office is going to be releasing our Resilience Action Plan soon, and in that we've identified priority projects to kind of provide support for tackling through whichever funding means that is. And yeah, that's kind of my update. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Alana Irwin, Sustainability and Resiliency Administrator, City of Boynton Beach. So I'm going to talk about today briefly just some of the updates of what we're working on here in the City of Boynton Beach. First is our adaptation plan. This is a grant-funded project through the Resilient Florida program. We're about 80% done with the plan, optimistic that we'll get it passed through and adopted in May, which will be great because it also identifies strategies and prioritized projects that will help us ensure resilience to flooding, sea level rise, as well as factors pertaining to extreme heat. So we're really excited for this plan. It's one of many strategies that we're working on right now to help just improve our overall community resilience. We're also working towards another grant-funded project through the Resilient Florida program with our vulnerability assessment. We currently have a competitive solicitation out there right now. We're hoping to award the contract in the next few months when the solicitation is complete, and move forward with updating our 2021 vulnerability assessment to comply with the statutory changes from 2024. Our Water Utilities Department is also working on a green infrastructure assessment. This is an overview of the entire water utilities service area, looking at swales in the community. The city had recently passed an ordinance that would allow residents to plant in the swales, and we had to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and just be like, hey, let's understand what our system looks like so we're putting the right species in the right place. So this assessment kind of serves as a twofold process. So it helps the city identify in the capital improvement project which types of species we can plant in the soils if we were to do so to help with beautification and other resilience measures, but also gives the opportunity for residents to submit a right-of-way permit to plant in their swales as well. So we're about 60% completed with this assessment, hoping to have this assessment done by summer so we can start processing some of these right-of-way permits and residents can start planting in their swales in a way that is more cohesive and makes sense with our water management practices. We're also working on a grant-funded urban heat resilience strategy. This, while it is extreme heat, does focus a lot on tree canopy, which also ties into our flood resiliency goals in the community. This project is grant-funded through the Climate Smart Communities Initiative, and we've partnered with a couple of organizations to develop this strategy. So we're hoping to have that finalized by the end of July and then take that up to adoption through commission soon thereafter. And lastly, I wanted to take a moment to plug our Earth Month event. We are hosting a Community Earth Month event on April 25th from 12 to 4 at our Centennial Park, which is right next to our City Hall complex. We're going to have live music, local sustainable vendors. We're actually doing a rain barrel giveaway for residents to help with water conservation measures. And we're going to have some family activities. So hope to see you there. And thank you for Carolina and the team for hosting this meeting today.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you very much for being here. Nice meeting you, Valentina. I think we met before. Okay, Greg, do you have any additional update? Oh.
Greg's passing it to me. Amy Eason, Martin County Environmental Resource Engineer and Resilient Martin Project Lead. So in Martin County, we have our 4-mile beach restoration project that's about to kick off. It should be complete before the end of April because of sea turtle season, so we want to make sure we're in and out of there as quickly as possible. We also have the Indian River Living Shoreline project where we're starting to put some breakwaters out to protect a community park. And we've done some native plantings and living shorelines near the shoreline. We also have our Old Palm City North neighborhood project. It's an old neighborhood within Palm City that will consist of raising some roads, resurfacing, and improving the drainage in that neighborhood. We're awaiting funding, HMGP funding, to do construction for our Mockingbird Lane. That is to raise about 1/4 mile of road to almost 3 feet in order to be more resilient due to sea level rise and tidal flooding that it experiences every year. We also have the Golden Gate project where we are improving a stormwater treatment area. We're going to need to install a higher weir because we're having sea level rise coming in and it's killing all the vegetation because of the salt water that it's not used to. So we're in the middle of design and working with South Florida Water Management District on permitting that project. We're also working on our adaptation plan. We received additional Resilient Florida money for that. That plan should be wrapped up in December of this year, as well as we're really working on our integrated watershed plans where we are looking at flood control, water quality, and sea level rise at the same time so that we can have improvements that address all those conditions. And then lastly, we continue to work with South Florida Water Management District on the flood protection level of service. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, anybody else? Any comment, question? If not, I just have, we're going to go for, I almost skipped this part. Thank you, Yvette. So with that, I'm going to go to public comments. Yvette, is there anyone on the line or any public comment card?
Yes, I have a public comment card for Caitlin Newcamp.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all the presentations. Been super helpful. And also, thanks for receiving our comments on the 203 study and also on the resiliency plan with some of our other NGO partners. I just have a few comments from Audubon, Florida. So we definitely appreciate your work in advancing the water management under increasingly challenging conditions, especially lately. As we are experiencing one of the most significant drought conditions in recent years, this moment highlights the importance of strengthening our water supply planning and ensuring that limited water resources are managed as efficiently and equitably as possible across the system. We encourage continued evaluation of how water is allocated during dry periods, with a focus on balancing ecological needs, estuary health, and agricultural demands in a way that reflects long-term sustainability. And in particular, we see a critical need to accelerate investments in resiliency projects in the northern part of the system. These projects should go beyond traditional drainage approaches and instead emphasize water storage, retention, and landscape scale solutions that help hold water on the land when it is available. We are encouraged by the upcoming workshop next month where we can begin to discuss some of these challenges. Strengthening upstream components is essential to improving system-wide performance during both drought and high rainfall conditions and will bolster South Florida's resiliency overall. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Caitlin. Anybody else, Yvette?
Dr. Moran, that's it for hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I have some closing remarks and some events that are coming up. So thank you, Yvette. Here's just a survey link for you all to provide comments and feedback to us. Can you pass to the next one, please? Yeah, thank you. So this is our regular feedback survey. Please send comments. Our two next meetings are June 24 and October 21st. Please join us. Save the date in your calendar. Next one, please. We are going to, can you please just help us on some of the upcoming meetings? If you have suggestions of topics, we have already DM and DOT confirmed for our next meeting in June. If you have additional topics that you have interest or that you want to present, please share with us. We are still confirming some of the agendas before we close this year, so we welcome input always. Next one, please. On February 24 to 26, our team and others joined the 10th Biennial Water Institute Symposium. Here's just some of the pictures. It was a great event, a lot of presentations from a significant number of partners, well attended. Again, just a great opportunity to collaborate and learn. Army Corps was there too. We had a joint session. It was, again, just a great opportunity to connect and a lot of focus on water issues. So great event. And we do have a few more on the next slides. So for the upcoming, we have the 2026 FWEA South Florida chapter on April 9 in Miami. The DEP quarterly forums, the next one is May 6. It's a webinar. The 50th annual meeting, National Conference of the Association of State Floodplain Managers is this year in Milwaukee in May. We have the Florida Stormwater Association Annual Conference, June in Charlotte Harbor, Florida. And next one. Yes, the Environmental Permitting Summer School in July and Marco Island, our 4th anniversary there. Then we have 50th Annual Resilience Florida Conference, again in Charlotte Harbor. It's always done in coordination with the Southwest Florida Resilience Conference as well. It's going to be the same. I don't remember if it's the week before or after, but it's jointly there with the Annual Florida Resilience Conference. And then last is the Southeast Florida Climate Leadership Institute, November 4 and 6. This is the Broward round they're going to do earlier this year. So beginning of November, lots of updates as well for the Climate Summit leadership. So with that, thank you very much for being with us today. We are adjourning the meeting.